bad. No, not in any way, shape, or form. But you don't necessarily want a plunky little bizarro dissonant sound in the middle of your Chopin, if you understand what I'm saying. So we started judging that as good and bad, but what that's done is it's giving us this pursuit of physicality. It gives us a pursuit of the masculine, an imbalance. My perception of this bowl is, or excuse me, that this bowl is masculine. My perception of it is feminine, my experience of it. Neither are independent of each other, but somehow we've been told that only what we can hold in our hand matters. How many people know that what happened on Thursday? That 90% of environmentally protected wetlands surrounding the United States of America were opened for oil drilling and fracking? While everybody's looking at social media, these little things tuck under the carpet and we don't even know they happen. What I'm saying here with a lot of this is, I find it intriguing with algorithms. Algorithms, there's one particular energy that is far more efficient in advertising systems. Do you think it's positive or negative? Do you think it's empowering or disempowering? Which one do you think would be more effective? It's the negative. Negative energy has as much as 160% greater efficiency compared to positive energy in advertising. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that would be?
Fear. Stirs people.
Fear. More interesting.
Drama.
People want something to fight against.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge valid point right there, because you get the positive and the negatives in that. If you get positivity, most of the negative people occasionally want to put something in, oh, you know, go toot your positive horn somewhere else. But, you know, for the most part, they just kind of keep their mouth shut. But what usually happens is when you talk about something negative, the positive spiritual people have to come in and defend. And they have to fight against that. And it's an interesting thing, but it's even more elemental even than that, more biological, the limbic system. Hippocampus, something called the amygdala. Amygdala is a stereo set of glands that are in the human brain. That the limbic system is that reptilian, what I would call the serpent brain. It's the first strike brain. You have no choice over whether it's going to happen or not. You go into a haunted house and you know it's a haunted house and you know it's all fake. And you still walk down that dark hallway and someone jumps out and you go, "Ah!" And then what happens? You start laughing, oh my God, it's fake. You knew they were at the end of the hallway. It's been too quiet for the last 10 seconds. And yet you go down the hallway and you're still, have you ever seen Monsters, Inc.? Great movie. Great movie about, you know, how they actually take the negative energy of human children, the monster world did, to harness that to power the monster world. And then of course by the end they ended up finding out that it was actually happiness, ecstasy, joy that was even more efficient than the negativity. Maybe we'll find that, I don't know. But you don't really have a lot of, choice in how you're going to respond in those kinds of reptilian situations. And I'm using the word reptilian on purpose right now, without going off on a side tangent. Those reptilian experiences, you don't really have a lot of choice there if you're concerned with trying to be positive, trying to be spiritual. You've got all these veils of spirituality, and I'm a spiritual person. So what Charlotte did, I'm going to ignore it. And I'm going to overlook it because I'm a spiritual person. And you think that that's a real smile that she's got. But I'm going to ignore it because I'm really spiritual. So I got it all down. I got it figured out. I was just watching Ellen, see what her response is. I think she's just trying to play it safe. So imagine this feedback loop system where everything's coming back. And we start to think that that dream life that we're living is somehow real. You know, Yeshua said in the Aramaic teachings, he said you cannot serve God and mammon. What does mammon mean? Would you say?
I said the other.
The other is a good way to put that. A lot of times people say it means money, and it doesn't mean money. Technically, what it means is materiality. It means to believe that this is real. And it's an interesting time in human history when we have a virtual artificial intelligence reality coming together with reality, what we think is reality, which this is also an artificial intelligence reality, if you haven't figured that one out yet. And all of a sudden the lines get really blurred and everything gets dumped out, and we start wondering why the world is going to, as Greg Braden's mom says, to hell in a handbasket. You know, like, what's going on? Why is it all falling apart if we tried for so long to be spiritual? We tried for so long to be upbeat. It's kind of an interesting little thing, how that works out. You know, one of my fascinations for me growing up was with, who knows what you call it today? Native American culture, you know, the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, you know, the nations, etc. I don't know if you realize, but what was it? A couple of weeks ago, it was announced that anthropologists had found the skeleton of a girl in Alaska from 11,500 years ago. The oldest known skull that north in our hemisphere. Kind of neat. And they're able to actually crack apart that DNA and follow that DNA string back. It's a funny thing because we talk about all this Caucasian and Mongoloid, and all these, that doesn't sound like a good word, but all these different words we use for human DNA, but you know, it all goes back to one particular place. It all goes back to northeastern Africa. Every single strain, and there was a point where China a few years ago was trying to claim that they had unique DNA there, but they don't. It still came back to Africa. But there's other things that are being found now too, like down in the oceans. There was almost 24 deep sea creatures in 2017 that were found to have extraterrestrial DNA that was absolutely unequivocally proven to be not of this earth. And that'd be a good place to hide, yes? Nice little thing. And I want to say this too, we have so much of a thought system about extraterrestrial, but what about transdimensional? Meaning that they're right here, slipping in and out. And now if there's anybody that has a tendency to being one of those ET transdimensionals, I'm not going to mention blue or water. But some people just seem to have a predisposition to particular subjects. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to point that way. Pam's got a big smile. But what I'm saying is, we're at a crossroads right now, and it's really time for us, you know, in these last couple minutes I've got with you, it's time for us to start being as authentic as we possibly can, to let go of trying to live up to whatever these parameters we're supposed to be living up to, whatever these theological ideas, all these self-improvement ideas and rah, 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 and just shut up for a couple of minutes and allow that quiet cosmic vibration, as Yogananda called it, of your soul to speak. And start allowing yourself to express from that. And start, you know, to call a spade a spade. Being spiritual doesn't remove accountability. The difference is that when you are awake in that manner and you seek to live consciously, you're not going in and basically privatizing a, let's just use it as an example, a penal system, privatizing it, you know, let's just use the example of the year 2001, privatizing that penal system and making other people pay for what you don't want to feel inside of yourself. And it just so happened that in the year 2001, when that system was privatized, more prison cells were built in that year in the United States of America than in our entire history as a nation for hundreds of years prior to that. We did more in 12 months than our entire history up to that point. Then you need people in the system. You need people biting the hook. And what I'm offering is, you know, you have a choice as to whether you bite the hook. And you also have a choice as to whether, if you already have that hook in your mouth, to consciously take that out, take a couple of steps back. And start realizing that everything that you're seeing is a part of that dream. My book, Echoes of an Ancient Dream. I'm going to just read you something in closing from this, and then a little bit from Jaron's book. Al Gore invented the internet, right? So Jaron actually says in a recent interview and in his book that there's some truth in that. It was actually Al Gore's idea to have a system where everyone could communicate electronically across the earth, originally just for governmental systems. So there's some truth in that, but you know, Al's a little creative sometimes. Maybe it's that whatever it is that he puts in his hair, which he could probably loan some to old Trumpy, but Trumpy? I never said that. But what I'm saying is, we've always had this pursuit of getting out and what was called a manifest destiny during the birth of our nation. Does anybody know what manifest means? We've got The Secret and all these different things that talk about manifestation. Is there anybody in this room that actually knows what the word manifest really means?
Did it make something happen?
Make something happen?
I said the same thing.
Like I want to relocate to an area and it's happening.
The word the original word in Latin is manus festus. Manus means hand. Festus means obvious. Manus festus in Latin is as obvious as the hand. Manus is where the word human comes from. Human. Now we say human. Human, hue. Does anybody know what hue means?
God.
Color.
No. It's an expression of God. Ekankar. The word hue is, any artists in the room? It means quality or timbre. Quality of color. Human is that spoken quality of that one which has hands. Interesting little thing. Actually, a primates would be considered human in that sense. Interesting little thing. But what I'm saying is, manifest destiny means, in other words, obvious destiny. And that was when the Euro-Americans were coming to take their Christianity and roll it all over these heathens all over the continent. All of these, what are some other words? Heathens?
Savages.
Savages is it. That's probably the great word. And they created this interesting little system, little iron backbone and iron internet that went all around our country so that they could take this good news across. But had a little bit of a side thing to it. Because while they were taking all of these riches and wealth and people to develop this country, I'll read you a little bit from this. It wasn't until after I graduated high school in 1990 that I found out that my U.S. history books were lies. It was a few years after. And I used to argue with my history teacher. He hated me. Hated me in that way. And he never even really spoke English. He spoke English with this fake Spanish thing, but he was no more Spanish than I was, being born, 20 minutes from Camden, New Jersey. Don't hold that against me. But, well, maybe that would work now. But what I'm saying is, I used to argue back and say, I don't think that's true. That Plymouth Rock thing, maybe. That first Thanksgiving, it never happened. There was no first Thanksgiving. All you have to do is study the actual history to find that out. But anyway, I developed this fascination because my uncle owned all these peach orchards. He was one of the largest peach farmers in the northeastern U.S. for many years in the 70s and 80s. And then, of course, that was when these different trade acts came and U.S. peach values plummeted because the U.S. government started, thanks to certain kinds of economics in the early to mid-80s, I won't put any names on it, started shipping in Chilean peaches for a higher value than what American peaches were able to get, and it destroyed the American farmer. There's a great film to watch called Country with Jessica Lange. Right after she did Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman, she got offers to be in every big movie on earth, and she said, no, I'm going to produce this little movie over here first. Incredible film with her, Wilford Brimley, Sam Shepard, who just died. Anyway, I got this fascination with the sound of that iron horse in the middle of the night. And there was a particular afternoon that my best friend David, who lives right near that track right now in New Jersey, we went out there and I told him, we would sit there and put our hands on the rails knowing that the train was coming. And we would lay down with our ear and we would actually hear the train when it was miles away. So one day I got this idea, I'm like, put your heart on it. Lay your heart down on the rail And he's like, and it was mud slop. It was like a big mess, and we're laying down in the mud. Well, he's mostly laying in the mud. I'm just like listening. And he puts his heart down. And I was about 4 feet away at the time. And it just became really still. And I told him, stop breathing for a minute. He's like, and all of a sudden, I heard in the rail. Interesting little thing. A couple minutes later, it was about 10 minutes later, when the train comes, we're screaming our brains out and everything. So I just wanted to read you a little passage from that to kind of encapsulate how we always have choices in how we move forward, how we act in any present moment. You're never, regardless of your limbic system and your reptilian serpent brain, you always have choices of how you respond in a situation. And if you bite the hook, stop, take the hook out, take a breath, and then change your course. Recalibrate, okay? Years later, meaning after that experience of the heart on the tracks, in my late teens, D. Brown's epic and heartbreaking tome, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, became a holy consuming fire that burned its bittersweet, yet somehow beautiful light through my soul. It was while reading this much more historically accurate rendering of the ethnic genocide of the native peoples, of what would become the American continent, that I experienced a very hair-raising realization about my childhood experiments and yearning to sense a natural heartbeat through the backbone of the iron horse. I still have that fascination with the sound of a train. Woody Guthrie, John Denver, John Gorka, Arlo Guthrie, Johnny Cash. Ooh, I'm Johnny Cash. And I'm wearing all black. It was this very 19th century iron internet that transported soldiers, 49ers, mountain men, beaver eaters, and more than a few Euro-Americans demanding their obvious manifest destiny as shareholders of the American dream across the quote-unquote new lands. These rails also brought out untold thousands of hunters and buffalo poachers with the sole intent of wiping out the Tatanka, the buffalo, the living heart of the Plains nations, in the hope that those very nations could be forced into surrender to their own obvious destiny, at least in the eyes of the self-proclaimed superior and civilized white man. They wanted to strip them away from their true home, the land of their ancestors in untold generations before them. The deeper archetype of my childhood, seeking to sense the pulse of a human heart coursing through the iron rail, is not lost on me. And I want to leave you just with a couple of sentences. Be awake. In our mad pursuit to be spiritual, interesting little things can be slipped right under our radar without us realizing it, and come in from behind in such a way that we don't realize it's happening. Kind of like putting a frog in a room temp water and then just slowly increasing the temp, increasing the temp, increasing the temp. I never tried that. I wanted to as a kid, but I think my mother would have kind of disowned me, but I thought about it a lot. And it makes sense in a lot of ways. What I'm saying is we are the ones we've been waiting for. We were brought here for the purpose of navigating what I call the cosmic shift. We are the ones we have been waiting for. It's us. We're the grounding rods of humanity. We're here meant to keep this boat on course and calibrated, but that's not going to happen if we're in a constant mad pursuit to become bigger, better, faster, more, and think that there's somehow something conscious or spiritual in that, as if who you are right now isn't enough, or who the people around you are right now somehow is not enough. So I just want to leave you with a couple of lines from Jaron's book. He said, our fate rests on human traits that have not yet been defined in scientific terms. He's talking about artificial intelligence and its power, such as common sense, kindness, rational thought, and creativity. While the AI fantasy is that we'll be able to automate wisdom at any minute, Can we at least all agree that these qualities can for now only be harnessed by our systems, yet not created? They can't be generated as yet by our systems. The questions of our age are, can we see through our seductive information systems in order to see ourselves and our world honestly, without the addiction of the systems of communication? How bad do things have to get before tech culture decides it's worth challenging even our most cherished mythologies in order to dig ourselves out of our mess? What I'm saying is that the media stuff is fun, it's exciting. But there's something that's right here. Read some Viktor Frankl if you want to learn about what's right here, man. Search for meaning. There's things that are right here, just the pure pulsing beat of your heart, the rise and fall of your breath, the movement of air across your skin. That is quadrillion, was it 80 quadrillion? 1 in 80 quadrillion was the chances of winning both lotteries this past week. Just a number to throw out there. Had a lot of zeros. 4 sets of zeros, 12 zeros. But what I'm saying is, we're here to not bite the hook. I'm not necessarily saying we're here to push away artificial intelligence, not at all, or algorithms, no. Virtual reality, not at all. But to at least to be aware that if we're getting yet one more layer of a dream laid on top of what we haven't even yet recognized as a dream, how are we ever going to wake up to this one if we're already biting the hook of the next one that looks so damn enticing and seductive? So I'm just saying, if you could just take a breath, and when you feel the handshake, and it's not from caffeine,